Open up your book to page 203. We're going to start reading chapter 37 of Where the Mountain Meets the Moon. The next morning, Da'afu shook Minli awake. "Wake up, sleepy," Da'afu said, pulling her up. "Come on, we want to show you something." "Yes," Afu said, "hurry." Minli followed them out of the house and through the streets. It was almost as if there were a parade, for all the family were coming out of their homes and following. Minli hadn't realized Da'afu's family was so large. They were aunts, uncles, cousins. The home behind the red gate doors were really a village of relatives. As Minli ran around through the open doors, she stopped and grinned, because there, waiting on the stone ground, was Dragon. He was strong and smiling, sitting straight and alert. There was no daze in his eyes and no foul blackness on his body. In fact, except for 4 pale red scars on his arm, he looked exactly as he did before he met the green tiger. "You are okay," Minli said, and she hugged him. "Of course," Dragon said to her, grinning with happiness. "I told you that dragons heal quickly." "Yes, they do," Agong said from beside her. After the poison left him, his wounds healed almost immediately. Minli was so happy to see the dragon that she didn't notice that most of Da'afu's family were surrounding them in awe. "A dragon," she heard one small boy whisper, "a real one." "We told you so," Da'afu murmured to their cousins. "See?" "Unfortunately, friend dragon," Agong said loudly so that all could hear, "you are too large for us to show you proper hospitality inside our home." "That's okay. We should leave soon anyway," Minli said, and turned to Da'afu. "If you will still show us the way to Never-Ending Mountain." "Of course." They grinned, and Amma said, "Yes, you should leave as soon as you can. The sooner you leave, the sooner you can return to your parents. That would be for the best." Agong nodded when he heard Amma's words. "Breakfast then," he said, "and then we will see our new friends off." So even though the rocky land was cold and windy, the family brought their breakfast of warm rice porridge out to eat. No one wanted to miss a moment of looking at a real dragon. Amma led a large iron pot rolled in a rough wood platform by 2 of Da'afu's uncles in front of the dragon. The pot was steaming and full, and Minli recognized it as the medicine tea. An aunt carried cups of tea on 2 trays balanced on her shoulders with a stick for anyone to take. Minli carefully reached for a cup. The fragrant aroma was too tempting to let pass. "We should not call this drink medicine," an uncle said. "It is too delicious, and now there is no more green tiger. There is nothing for it to cure." "Maybe we should call it well tea," Afu laughed, "since the green tiger is down in the well." "No," Agong said, "we want to remember our friends, not our enemies." "We should call it dragon well tea," Da'afu said, "because it made the dragon well." The family all cheered at that, and there was a look of softness in Dragon's eyes that Minli had never seen before. He was unused to kindness, she realized. He had spent most of his years alone and trapped by his flightless body. Too soon breakfast was over, and Minli was packing her possessions into the yellow silk bag the king had given her, while Amma tied supplies onto the backs of Afu and Da'afu. "Just in case," she said, slipping in their simple food of rice wrapped in leaves and salted boiled eggs. "Bring Minli to Never-Ending Mountain and then come right home." Agong put his hands on Minli's shoulders and said, "You are a brave girl, Minli, quick and clever, but you have been away from home far too long. Go as quickly as you can." Amma wrapped her warm arms around Minli, then brought out a warm jacket. "For you," she said. "We made it while you were sleeping. Your dress is too thin for the mountain." The jacket was multicolored, made of large patches sewn together, some dark blue, some deep purple, a few bright red. Min Li smiled thankfully. Already the cold wind was chilling her, but she was hesitant to ask these people for anything since they had already given her so much. As she put it on, she marveled at its warmth. The fabric looked like plain cotton, but she felt as warm as if she had put on thick fur. "Let's go then," Da'afu said, and the boy swung up his arm in excitement. It was only then that Min Li noticed the large gash missing from his sleeve. She looked at the sleeve of her new coat and the bright red patch that made it, and she gasped. "Goodbye," Da'afu's family waved. As they waved, Min Li saw each of them had missing material from their sleeves. Her goodbyes froze in her throat as she realized her warm coat was made of pieces cut from the family's own clothing. "Come on," Afu said, her white hand slipping from her notched sleeve to pull at Min Li. "Hurry up." "Yes," Dragon said. "We should go so the twins can return to the village as soon as possible." Min Li nodded, and as she waved a grateful goodbye to the village, a sea of ruined sleeves fluttered back at her. Chapter 38. As Min Li and Dragon followed Da'afu up the harsh landscape, the wind blew wildly. But traveling was not difficult. Dragon carried them over any large cracks or openings. Min Li had forgotten how enjoyable it was to travel with him. And Da'afu, laughing with pure delight as they rode, Dragon looked like two ripe hawthorn berries. Their merriment and the brilliant red color of their clothes and of Dragon himself seemed to warm the cold landscape. It was only when Min Li's hands poked out of her sleeves into the icy air that she realized how cold it really was. "It's not much farther," Afu said to them after they had walked some distance. "We should be able to see Never-Ending Mountain soon." "You've never seen the Old Man of the Moon, though?" Min Li asked. "Has anyone?" Da'afu shook their heads. "No one has ever seen him," Da'afu said. "No one in the history of our family or village. Though we do know he is the one who moved our ancestors here," Da'afu said. "The Old Man of the Moon brought your ancestors here?" Min Li asked. "How?" "Even though our ancestors did their best to please the magistrate, they were not able to make him happy. One day, a neighbor rushed to our ancestor's home, his horse panting from running. "I had just returned from the city," the neighbor gasped. "I rushed all the way here to warn you. The magistrate is convinced the answer you sent him was a trick, and you are keeping the real secret from him. He's coming here to punish you. He plans to destroy your home and family." "Run away while you can. There is not much time. His soldiers will be here tomorrow." Our ancestors cried with fear. The large family, the many sons and daughters, aunts and uncles, and children and grandchildren could not help being scared. But Yi Yi, the great-grandfather and head of the family, raised his hand for attention. "It looks as if misfortune is coming," he said, "and there is nothing we can do. We will not run. The soldiers would easily find us, and the magistrate would be even more brutal. And I do not want to spend our last moments together in panicked flight." Yi Yi looked at the bright blue sky and the sun shining on the mountain beyond their home. It was hard to imagine the coming trouble. "Little ones," he said to the children, "go fetch your favorite kites." Then Yi Yi turned to the adults. "Sons and daughters," he said, "prepare the finest picnic you can, with enough food and tea for all. We will not waste this time we have together. We will spend it as we always have, in happiness." The family nodded at Yi Yi's wise words. Quickly they rushed to do as he asked. They brewed large pots of their best chrysanthemum tea and filled special baskets with golden cakes and custard tarts, boiled chickens, crispy pork, fluffy steamed buns, and tea-stained eggs. And their brilliant kites, in the shape of buns and butterflies, were dragged out of storage and into the sun. Yi smiled at his family as they finished their task. He carried his favorite books of poetry, stories, and songs in a bag. "Come," he said, "let us climb the mountain." So together, with the tree leaves waving farewell, the family made their way up the mountain. They climbed high so the kites could fly without the trees getting in the way. When there was nothing between them and the sky, they stopped. They had a delightful time. The children laughed as their kites soared in the wind, the women smiled as they sipped the tea, and the men happily ate the delicious treats. Yi recited poetry that made the women sigh, told stories that made the men gasp, and sang songs that made all the children join in. But all too soon the day was ending. The moon was already rising in the sky when the children were told to wind the strings of their kites. "Why bring the kites down?" an older boy asked. "This will be the last time we will be able to play with them." "Yes," a girl said. "Let them fly for as long as they can." So instead of bringing the kites in, they cut the strings. As the kites were freed, a strong gust of wind burst from the sky. One by one, the butterflies and dragons disappeared as if flying home to the moon. As the kites vanished from sight, there was a sad sigh. No one spoke, but they all wished for an escape from tomorrow's tragedy. Quietly, the family packed their belongings and began to climb down the mountain. They walked a long time, so long that the moon rose overhead and they began to shiver with cold. "Are we lost?" a child asked. "This does not look like the way home." "That's impossible," his mother told him. "How can we be lost? There is no other direction than down." "But the boy is right," Yi said. "Look at the rock before us. We have climbed this mountain many times, yet I have never seen this rock or any rock of this type before." "And there are no trees," a young girl said. "Anyways, always there were trees below us, and now there is just more rock." "It's colder, too," another girl said. "It's much too cold for an early autumn night." "What has happened?" a woman asked. "I think," Yi said slowly, "we are no longer on our mountain. Somehow we are on a different one." "How is that possible?" a man asked, "and why?" Before Yi could open his mouth to reply, one of the children shouted. "Home!" she cried. "Our home is right there!" And it was their home. The dark red gate doors were wide open, allowing them to see light shining from the windows of their houses. Their chickens squawked a greeting, and their dogs jumped through the gate with cheerful barks. Our ancestors couldn't believe it. Dirty pots and pans they had left in the morning were still in the wash bins. Mixed up shoes and hanging laundry were exactly where they were before. Even the book that Yi had left open was on the same page. Yi walked from room to room and house to house, with the family following like a parade. Finally, he found a slip of bright silk stuck in the hinges of the gate doors. He turned around to look at the family crowding about him. "It's a miracle," he said to them. "We have been moved here beyond the magistrate's reach. We are saved." The family cheered, but could not help asking how, who did this. Yi looked at the empty land around him and dark blue sky with the moon above, and then at the thin strip of silk in his hand. "This silk is from one of the children's kites. The kites brought our wishes up to the old man of the moon, and he must have decided that our destinies lay here," he said, and he motioned upward. "For there is only one other here with us tonight. It is only us and the moon." "And your family has been here ever since?" Dragon asked. The children nodded. "For over 100 years our family has lived on the mountain, and we keep growing. Sometimes we travel down the mountain, sometimes people come to us. Anyone who visits is welcome to call our place home." "So," Minli began, but her words died away as Da Fu pointed toward the horizon. Minli and Dragon followed his hand and finally saw what could only be Never-Ending Mountain, home of the Old Man of the Moon.